Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In today's video, I'm going to go over the chase cards and the cards to look out for from the new set Capenna. So, let's get into it. I'm going to go over them by rarity. I'm going to start with Mythic, and then I'm going to go to Rare, Uncommon, and Common. You'll notice that there are no masterpieces on this list, and that's just because, for me, at least from what I've seen from the set, there are no masterpieces that I feel like are worth chasing. And if you wind up getting any of them, there's a bunch of them that look like they could be fun to play with, but I don't think you need to actually spend resources trying to pick them up over some of the other cards in the set. The other thing to keep in mind is that this set is entirely massive, so even if you're a VIP player, it's going to take you a long time to pick up the bulk of the set, and so there's really a lot of cards for you to look out for as you're opening packs that you're going to want in your collection. So, Mythics, yes. The first one is Angel of Suffering. This is a 9-mana angel. It's black. It is a 5/3 with flying and berserker, and it has mill 16. So if your opponent has 16 cards in your graveyard, this thing is going to gain lifelink. And then it has, when you take damage or lose life, you gain X life and destroy the top X cards of your library, where X is the life lost or damage taken. So this card is just absolutely cracked. As long as this thing's on the battlefield, you can't lose the game. The only thing that it has like preventing it from being like completely absurdly busted is that it has berserker and 3 toughness. So when it attacks your opponent, if they have a creature out, it's probably going to kill itself. So this is a kind of creature where if you can find some way to protect it, either give it prevent damage or give it first strike or something like that, then you're going to have basically God mode, because you just can't take damage. And then this is also going to enable a lot of decks, because there's a lot of black cards that make you just lose a ton of life, and then with this thing out, you just don't lose that life anymore. So you can really take advantage of those black cards that are like, lose a ton of life to get this really cool effect for very little mana, and then you can just use this thing with it, and the deck will work seamlessly. This is also going to be a great card to pair with the Planeswalker Lolth, for those of you who really like Lolth, as she's going to make it so that you lose life whenever you play a black card. So yeah, there's really a lot that you can do with Angel of Suffering. It's one of the few mythics that I don't have at the time of my recording this video, so I haven't gotten to test it myself, but it just looks absolutely ridiculous. Second of the mythics is Arcane Bombardment. This is a 16-mana support. It has level up. So as you do stuff, this card's going to level up. Specifically, when you cast a spell card, you're going to exile a random spell card from your graveyard, and then you're going to create a copy of X spell cards at random from your exile into your hand and give them all full mana. The X is going to be equal to this card's level. Then you're going to increase this card's level by 1, and this effect can trigger only once per turn. So basically, you're going to be able to level this thing up once per turn by casting a spell. The first time you cast a spell, you're going to get 1 spell back from effectively your graveyard for free. And then you're going to get 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6. So this is an entirely awesome card. You can play it with some really high mana cost spells and just cast them over and over and over again. I haven't tested this yet myself. I do have this card, but I mean, just looking at the card makes it seem like it's absolutely phenomenal. So definitely a card you're going to want to keep your eyes out for as you are pulling your packs. This is a card that's going to pair incredibly well, by the way, with Rawl, because Rawl's first ability that you're going to be spamming to get more cards in your hand is going to be throwing cards in your graveyard, and Rawl tends to be a spell-based planeswalker anyways, so you're just going to get a whole bunch of free spells and just absolutely mac on your opponent. Next on the list is Lord Xander the Collector. This card is currently not working as written, but that just makes him actually better. So Xander is a 20-mana 6/6. It has no evergreens of note, but is legendary. It is a vampire demon noble. The vampire is notable in that you can run it with one of the Sorens, with the third ability, Vampire Soren, to be able to just fetch a bunch of these things over and over again and make your opponent lose all the cards in their hand. But beyond that, the creature typing is not a very big deal. So when this creature enters the battlefield, your opponent discards 2 cards. Now, it says that they discard 2 cards, and in Puzzle Quest, typically card discard makes it so that you make your opponent discard the bottom cards in their hand. But for some reason, Xander is making your opponent discard the first 2 cards in their hand, not the last 2 cards in their hand. So you're going to make it so that if your opponent has any mana built up in their hand, it's just going to go. And if you have a way of making it so that you are getting multiple Xanders every turn, or flickering Xander, or really anything to get more copies of Xander, you're going to completely shut your opponent down. He has a second ability. When he attacks, you're going to destroy the top 5 cards of your opponent's library. Then if your opponent has 30 cards in their graveyard, you're going to gain 10 loyalty. So it takes a while to get there, for sure. If your opponent's playing a deck that's going to be milling themselves, then Xander's going to be in business. I personally haven't gotten this to trigger yet, but that's just because I wind up killing my opponent so quickly and efficiently once I've gotten Xander down. He has, when this creature dies or loses a reinforcement, you're going to destroy half of the opposing cards at random, rounded down. So your opponent needs to have at least 2 cards on the battlefield in order for something to get destroyed. Between the enter the battlefield and the death effect on Xander, Xander is a perfect card to run with Liliana Death's Majesty. Her first ability, Anoint, is going to destroy a creature you control and put it back on the battlefield and turn it into a zombie. So if you do that to Xander, your opponent's going to discard the first 2 cards from their hand, and then they're also going to lose half of their permanents. So Xander is absolutely phenomenal. This is one of my favorite mythics that I've played with from the set so far. It is definitely a card that I think you should chase. Next up on the list is Meeting of the Five. So this is a 20 mana spell with all 5 colors, so you can use this in any Planeswalker's deck. And it says fetch the first 3 different cards with exactly 3 colors from your library and give them all full mana. So first thing of note is that this does not fetch the first 3 different cards with exactly 3 colors. It fetches the first 3 cards with exactly 3 colors from your library. The different is not currently working. But nonetheless, with that working, with that not working, either way, this card is still absolutely cracked. It's really, really good. You can abuse this right now by just using 1 card with 3 different colors and just get 3 copies of it. And when it's fixed, you can just go back to running it with 3 different cards, so making sure you have 3 tricolor cards in your deck. But either way that you want to use Meeting of the Five, there's just so many good tricolor cards, especially with Capenna coming out and there being so many tricolor cards in the set, that there's really a lot that you can do with this card. The downside to this card is naturally that you have to have a bunch of cards that are tricolor in order for this to be good. So you actually need to have a collection of other cards for this card to shine. But if you have even like a moderate collection of cards, this is going to be an absolutely phenomenal card in your collection. And it's just going to get more powerful in Legacy. So great, great, great card. The next one is another creature. It's Raffine, Scheming Seer. So this is an 8 mana critter. It has Ward, so at the beginning of your opponent's turn, they can drain 3 mana from their hand, or this thing's going to get hexproof. It has Connive, that's what the little handshake is. It has Legendary and Flying. So it's a 1/4, which doesn't look particularly impressive at first, but the ability is really what makes this card. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control with Connive, and this thing does have Connive, connives X times. X is the number of enabled creatures you control, including their reinforcements. So if you're running this thing with something that just creates a bunch of reinforcements, probably tokens, then this thing is going to do quite a lot for you. So the way that Connive works is that every time you connive, you're going to draw a card and then discard a card. And if the top card in your graveyard is, I think, not a support, then the creature is going to get a permanent +1/+1 buff, which means that at the beginning of combat on your turn, let's say that you're playing with a token deck, you've got 10 tokens out, right? Then you can make Raffine connive 10 times, which is going to draw 10 cards and drop 10 cards into your graveyard, and then give Raffine a permanent buff for all of the non-support cards that you have discarded. So this is going to be really good for decks that you want things in your graveyard for. This is going to be really good for decks where you just want to draw cards. It's going to enable both of those effects. It's going to play very well with Jace, Unraveler of Secrets, or really any of the black cards that work around your graveyard, or even some of the new white cards that we've gotten that work around pulling things out of your graveyard as well. So it's going to boost itself up. The boosting is probably not going to be too significant because even if you have 10 critters and your deck is like 60% cards that aren't supports, then it's going to be getting like a 6/6 per turn, which really isn't that significant. I mean, I'm just going on averages here at 10 critters down with reinforcements. So you need a lot of reinforcements down on the battlefield for this thing to really like rev up quickly on its own for power. And by that point, you're probably killing your opponent anyways. So it's really just the card draw and the discard that you want to look at Raffine for, because it is quite unique in being able to do both of those things to such an extent. And so with that, Raffine is actually the last of the non-exclusive mythics. Now that we know which of the exclusives or which of the mythics are exclusive, I actually put that in its own category for this. So at the very end of the video, after going over like commons, right? Yeah, because that's the last rarity. I will go over the exclusives as well. So let's jump on over to the rares. The rares are going to be a jumble of removal, some cards that are just cards that you should look out for if you're a newer player, and then cards that just basically everyone should have, right? The removal, by the way, is going to be stuff that everyone should have. So the first one is Endless Detour. This card is just absolutely amazing. It is a 6-mana spell. It can be used in white, blue, or green, as it is a tricolor card. And it has, a lot of abilities. So you return an opposing Vanguard support at random to the top of your opponent's library. If you can't, you're going to return target opposing creature to the top of its own library. If you can't, return an opposing non-land support at random to the top of your opponent's library. If you can't, return the last card in target player's graveyard to the top of their library. If you can't, return the first card in target player's hand to the top of their library. So basically, no matter what, you're going to get something out of this card. Either you're going to make it so that your opponent loses their first card in their hand, or you're going to put something from someone's graveyard on top of their library. Or more importantly, really, is the top three here. You're going to get rid of a Vanguard, a creature, or a support. So I know it puts it on top of the opponent's library, so they are going to ultimately get it back. But still, having a 6-mana removal spell that can be used in 3 colors and that can take care of anything but lands is really, really good. So Endless Detour is a card that you're going to definitely want to keep an eye out for, as you'll want to throw it into a lot of your decks for all 3 of these colors, because none of those 3 colors tend to be colors that have strong single target removal at their disposal. This card here, Fleetfoot Dancer, is really just for newer players, people who haven't been able to level up their planeswalkers to level 60. 9 mana for a 4/4 with haste and lifelink is really, really good at low levels. So if you're playing with planeswalkers at like level 30 or below, this card is going to be absolutely correct. If you're playing with planeswalkers that are higher levels, like above 40 or even like 60, then this card is not going to be very good. But if you're a new player and you get this card, you should be very thrilled because it has 3 colors and you can throw it in a whole bunch of your decks and just win more. So good stuff. Next up is Giada, Font of Hope. This is one of my favorite cards that I've played with so far. It's 9 mana for a 2/2 with flying and vigilance. She is an angel and has, when an angel creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature gets a permanent +X buff, which is going to be equal to the number of creatures you control, including their reinforcements. She's also going to activate 3 gems to give mana to the first angel creature in your hand. But the real key here is that we have a lot of angel token producing cards in the game right now. And we also just got a new Elspeth Planeswalker that is going to make a bunch of angel tokens with her 3rd ability. So between her 3rd ability and then all the other cards that are going to be able to make angel tokens, you just get a bunch of tokens down and then all of your creatures get super swole and you kill your opponent really quickly. So Giada only costs 9 mana, which makes her really easy to get down on the battlefield. She has vigilance, so she will periodically be able to serve as a defender for you as she boosts up, as she is an angel, and as you get more angels and play more copies of Giada, she will get stronger. But most importantly, you're going to find that you're going to be able to get down angel stacks on the battlefield at well over 100 power very, very easily, very, very quickly. So I really, really like Giada. Angels, by the way, are my favorite tribe in Magic. So having being able to make so many different kinds of angel tribal deck is really fun. I like this card a lot. Next up is Ginny Fae, Jetmir's Second. This is a really, really cool card. So this one's 11 mana for a 3/3 When you cast this card, you destroy all tokens you control, and then you create that many green cat or dog tokens. Now, historically, green cats have had lifelink, but for some reason, her green cats do not. The dogs are 3/1 tokens with vigilance. So you're either going to be creating currently vanilla 2/2s, although I expect that maybe they'll gain lifelink, and then these 3/1 vigilant doggos. And then at the beginning of your turn, you may destroy target token creature you control. If you do, create X green cats or doggos, where X is 1 plus the destroyed creature's reinforcements. So if you're playing a token-based deck, you're able to just turn all of your tokens into cats or dogs. So you can actually just run a whole bunch of different token types. And then as she just on cast or passively is going to destroy all tokens or tokens of your choice. And turn them into cats or dogs, then you can just create a massive cat or dog stack and kill your opponent. And the dogs having vigilance means that they can survive to block for you as well. Beyond that, it has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, cat tokens you control gain haste until the beginning of your next turn, which is really useful because let's say that you've got a bunch of doggos down, and then you accidentally cast another Ginny Fae, or you just cast one because you want to, and then it's going to destroy all of your doggos. You can just have it turn into cats, and they'll still have haste and attack your opponent anyways. So you've got a lot of utility on this card. She's 3 colors, including the 2 colors that are the best for tokens, both green and white. So she's going to play really well with planeswalkers like Nissa Worldwaker or the Puzzle Masters Ajani. You can even actually run it with Puzzle Master Chandra as well, as she's going to be able to make a bunch of elemental tokens. But really, really, really cool card. Definitely one to keep an eye out for. And if you get it, try it out. I think you'll probably have a good time with it. Next card is Topiary Stomper. This is 9 mana for a 4/4 with Vigilance. It is a plant dinosaur and very much looks like a planty, I don't know, like T-Rex sort of thing, except with a sauropod's body. I don't know. But anywho, when this creature enters the battlefield, you're going to fetch the first land support from your library and give it full mana. So that's absolutely tremendous, especially since green's lands are wildly broken right now, especially if you've picked up the Puzzle Master set and you've gotten Colony Garden and Dryad Arbor. You're just going to be able to make hundreds of power of green elementals in no time, and just having another creature that's going to be able to fetch those lands for free for you is really, really good. A 4/4 with Vigilance for 9 is decent. It's nothing to write home about. And the bottom ability stating that if there are 5 or less green gems on the board, it gains can't attack and can't block is entirely irrelevant because if you're playing this with even a halfway decently constructed deck, you will always have 5 or more green gems on the battlefield. So this card is really, really good. When I first looked at it, I thought it would be like mediocre, but the green lands are just so absurdly broken right now. That this card is just really, really good. You could also run it with the lands that are going to give 5 mana to everything in your hand, and that will be pretty useful as well, because then you could just drop a Topiary Stomper and then get 5 mana to everything in your hand, and then just start going kaboom by playing a bunch of cards from your hand, which is pretty cool. But yeah, there's a lot that you can do with Topiary Stomper. In Legacy, you can pair it with Rupture Spire, just like how you could with Golos. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do with Topiary Stomper to just improve your tempo in your deck. Voidrend. Yeah, this is a must-have card. This is a 9 mana spell. It can't have its mana drained or raised, and you're going to destroy an opposing vanguard. If you can't, destroy target opposing creature. If you can't, destroy an opposing support. So this you have to have this card, right? Like it's you can use it in any white, blue, or black deck. It's one of the very few cards in the game that can destroy an opposing support, just outright support. It can destroy lands, it can destroy non-lands, it can destroy artifacts, it can destroy enchantments, it can destroy vanguards, it can destroy creatures, it can destroy anything that's on the board, it can destroy. So yeah, really, really good. One of the themes, by the way, that you'll notice as I go through these cards with you guys is that blue has gotten access to the best removal in the game, probably. And so blue as a color is going to shoot up the tier list. Blue decks are going to be everywhere, and it's going to be crazy. So keep that in mind as you're going to face a lot of nasty blue decks. I think the last card here is Zeatoras Envoy, just because, yeah, it is. Because, starts with a Z, and this is alphabetical. So Zeatoras Envoy is a 13 mana 5/4 Viashino warrior. It has trample, and it has this new mechanic right here. It's not called raid, but Forgetting it. Whatever. Ignore this. Basically, never do this. So, when this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, you're going to draw a card. That card is going to gain X mana, where X is the combat damage dealt to your opponent's planeswalker by this creature during this combat times 3. So, this is going to hit your opponent and draw a card and give you at least 15 mana. If this thing has double strike, then you're going to be getting 2 cards with, well, let's just face it, full mana. And as soon as you start getting more copies or boosting this, anything that you draw is going to have full mana. So this card is basically when it attacks, you draw a card and gain full mana. And if you've got double strike, you're going to draw 2 cards and gain full mana. It's really, really good. Even if you don't like think of it as, oh, for a rare, this is a good card. No, this is just a great card that you want 100%. Black, green, and red tend to struggle with card draw, and this thing is going to draw you a card every turn that you can play. So there are so many decks that you can throw this in. It's just sort of like glue that you can throw into really any deck, actually. Yeah, really, really good. You want this. So that's it for the rares. Let's go ahead and get into the uncommons. There are a surprising amount of uncommons that you're going to want to keep your eyes out for in this set. There's just a lot of really good cards in the set in general that I think will be really good to have in standard. And there's fortunately a lot of them in the uncommon range. So Brazen Upstart is a 10 mana 4/2. It has Defender, so it will block things and die. And it has, when it dies, pick one of the first 4 creatures from your library, fetch it, and give it 6 mana. So if you're struggling to meet objectives where you need to cast a certain number of creatures, this is going to be phenomenal for that. If you need to have like a lose X or more creatures, once again, it's phenomenal for that because it dies and then it just replaces itself with another creature. So this is a card that's not going to be doing anything crazy in the training grounds. However, for specific objectives and events, it's going to be a card that's worth keeping your eyes out for and trying out in your decks. The next card is one of the most busted cards in the set, which is kind of crazy to think about because it is an uncommon. It's called Cut Your Losses. So this is 9 mana. You're going to destroy the top 10 cards of your opponent's library, and then you're going to convert 10 gems to blue. First thing, remember, your opponent doesn't have a cap on the number of cards in their library, so you're not going to mill your opponent out by doing this, but it's going to help for creatures that have the mill effect. The most important thing is that it has convert 10 gems to blue, and if you want, you can destroy a creature you control to just cast it again and convert another 10 gems to blue. So blue really did not need a whole bunch of gem conversion in spell form, but hey, you know, whatever blue wants, blue gets. So blue gets a ton of removal and ridiculous mana ramp. So hooray. Now just imagine this in Teferi, Puzzle Masters, who's going to be denying a bunch of blue gems and now able to convert a ton of gems to blue to ensure that the whole board turns into time bubble gems so that you lose all the cards in your hand. Yeah, really, really nasty card. Really cool art, though. Love the art on this thing. Beautiful, but terrifying. Completely terrifying. Devilish Valet. So I don't have to worry too much about this because this card got nerfed today. So at the time of my recording this video, I'm recording it like, I don't know, 2 hours after they nerfed this thing, which it desperately needed. So this new mechanic Alliance is just absolutely crazy good. So the way that Alliance works is that when a creature enters the board, Alliance triggers. So under your control. So this is 9 mana for a 1/3, and you might think that Alliance double this creature's power until end of turn is not that crazy because it's just got 1 power. But let's pretend for a moment that like you run this with something that's going to create tokens, right? So let's say let's just take Thopter Spy Network, right? So Thopter Spy Network is going to make 4 tokens every turn. So the first token is going to double it to 2. The second token is going to double it to 4. The third token is going to double it to 8, and the fourth token is going to double it to 16. So it doubles really, really quickly. If you play any other creatures on that turn, it's going to double to 32. You play anything after that, and it's going to double to 64. So it's gonna just double, and it's just going to get really big real fast. So if you're wondering what the nerf on this thing was, they made it so that it caps at 40 power. Even with the cap at 40 power, this thing is going to be able to get to 40 power with haste like in no time. Really, really, really easily. Give it double strike, it's going to be hitting for 80. At an uncommon range, this is just a really, really good card. At any range, it's a really, really good card. Even with the cap at 40, really, really good card. So if you've got this card, it's definitely worth trying out. It's very powerful. This next card might shock you a little bit, but I've had a lot of fun playing with this. It's called Freelance Muscle. It's a 14 mana 4/4 Reach Rhino Warrior. Let's start with how amazing the art is, that we've got this mob boss rhino with an Uzi or something. I think it looks kind of funny. But the ability it has is actually really strong. So when this creature attacks or blocks, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is equal to the greatest power among other creatures you control. So first thing, it's green. Green tends to have big critters on the board. Second thing, when it attacks, it gets a boost equal to the biggest other creature, so it's going to boost up when it attacks. But more importantly, when your opponent attacks, every time an opponent's creature attacks, it's going to get that boost until end of turn. So let's say that you've got a 5/5 down on the board and freelance muscle, right? Not too crazy to think about. Your opponent attacks with a creature, it gets +5/+5, boosting to 9/9. Let's say that they have a second creature that attacks. Well, it's going to boost another 5/5. And if they have a third creature, it's going to boost yet another 5/5. So with the way that damage works in this game, it's any damage that this thing takes, as long as, you know, it'll take away from the boost before it actually takes away from its own health, right? So this thing is actually going to be able to survive to block a lot of things. This is one of the better defending creatures that we've gotten in Puzzle Quest. And it's an uncommon. So really great card to build around. There's a lot of ways that you can build around this to make it strong. I really like Freelance Muscle. You should keep an eye out for it. And if you've gotten it, you should definitely test it out. Next up is Graveyard Shift. This is an 8-mana black spell with basically pick one of the first 4 creature cards from your graveyard and move it to play under your control. I always love things that are going to be pulling things from my graveyard for free, and this is basically 8 mana to play a creature for free, especially if you run it with Liliana that destroys the top 8 cards from your library for her first ability. It's pretty easy to get a bunch of cards in your graveyard, so you're going to be able to get stuff for free. It also has the ability to give itself flash, but inconsequential. Next up is Elicit Shipment. So this is kind of like a better Talent of the Telepath, right? It's 5 mana. You're going to pick one of the first 4 instead of the first 3 cards from your library, fetch it, and give it 6 mana. So this card basically just narrows down the size of your deck, which means that if you're running either a combo or if you're just generally trying to make something happen, you're going to make it happen a lot more consistently and a lot more easily. Furthermore, it has Brass Knuckles, which is not what that mechanic is called, but that's what I'm going to call it, which means that you can sack a creature to use this ability again. So you can use this for like lose creature objectives and just go through your deck really quickly, lose stuff to the Elicit Shipment. Absolutely phenomenal card. This is a must-have, especially for black, just because black doesn't have a whole lot of card draw. And this is like specific card fetch and give that card mana. So this is a card that you're going to want to have. Next up, Riveter's Charm. So there's a lot of charms in this set. There's one for each of the 3 mana guilds, or, well, mobs, I guess, right? Or whatever they're called, the demon groups, but, well, whatever. Riveter's Charm is, I think, the best of the charms. There's another one of the charms that's worth looking out for, but I think Riveter's is probably the best. So it's 9 mana. If you have 6 or more black gems, something happens. 6 or more red, something happens. 6 or more green. That's how all the charms work. 6 of each of their colors. However, this one's 3 abilities are destroy the opposing vanguard or creature with the greatest mana cost, and draw 3 cards, give them outcast, and give them X mana, where X is the number of red gems on the board, and exile all cards from your opponent's graveyard. So you're pretty much always going to see that there are 6 or more of every kind of gem on the board, so you're probably going to get all 3 abilities every time you use this card. And so, yeah, draw 3 cards, give them at least 6 mana each is really, really good. For some reason, the cards with Outcast that you draw with Riveter's Charm right now are not being exiled at the end of your turn. They just stay in your hand. So you're getting an extra turn to cast them and give them mana anyways. And then it's just 9 mana to destroy something and then also draw cards and potentially play a bunch of them. So really, really good card. If you have this, you're going to want to throw it in a lot of your black, red, green decks. Yeah, but simple. You want it. Draws you cards, gets rid of your opponent's graveyard, and destroys their stuff. Big win. Next up, we've got Rocco Cabaretti Caterer. So this is much in vein of the similar of the first uncommon that I went over. So this is 7 mana for a 3/1. It can store 20 mana, which is kind of crazy to think about. And when it enters the battlefield, you're going to pick one of the first 4 different creatures from your library, fetch it, and give it mana equal to whatever you've stored into this thing. So once again, for just cast creature objectives, this is a great card to have. You can fill this thing with mana and then just have it fetch another one of itself, and then another one of itself, and another one of itself, and it's just going to be able to play a bunch of them and fulfill your objectives. So really good for that. Beyond that, it's once again not a card that you're really going to be like, oh my gosh, in the training grounds, this thing's absolutely insane. But yeah, still a good card to keep your eyes out for. It could also be used to initiate a combo, as you are able to fetch pretty much almost any creature in the game. Not everything, 20 mana isn't everything, but it's almost everything. So it's going to be really good for gluing those types of things together. Next up on the list is Rumor Gatherer. This is 9 mana for a 2/1. It has Alliance, so Alliance, draw a card. Then if you control 3 or more creatures, that card gains 6 mana. So I know at a glance this thing doesn't look ridiculous, but if you put this, and I know there was a joke in my Discord about how you just throw anything in Puzzle Master Ajani and it becomes good, but you throw this thing into Puzzle Master Ajani and you're going to be making 2 of those cat tokens every turn, meaning that you're going to be drawing 2 cards every turn with this thing, right? Because Alliance makes it so that whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, the Alliance thing triggers. You're going to have 3 creatures on the battlefield probably pretty easily. You just need to play this and another creature. So basically, you're just going to get a guaranteed draw 2 extra cards and give them both 6 extra mana every single turn. And then with that, you're going to draw more creatures, and you're just going to just get into this loop where you're drawing a ton of cards and giving them all mana. So for one of our events right now, you need to have a Pauper Plus deck, and Ajani is really the best option to use for that node. And then this is going to probably insert itself as a must-have for that node with Ajani Puzzle Masters, because it's just ridiculous how many cards you're going to draw from that thing. Next up on the list is Sleep with the Fishes. I can't believe this card exists in Puzzle Quest, honestly. It's 11 mana, disable target opponent's creature permanently, forever. It does not undisable, and create a fish token. The fish token is a 1/1 token with unblockable, so we can ignore the fish token, although the fish token is actually kind of decent because it's going to make it so that your opponent is going to waste their removal on it, but especially for a Timeless Voyage, right? That bottom node where your opponent's going to try and dump on your soul by having double matches, you just make it so that their creatures are permanently disabled. It's better than Sigarda's Imprisonment. It's better than really, honestly, any other removal we've ever had as single target removal in this game, because once the thing's disabled, it can't do anything. It doesn't enter the battlefield effects, it doesn't attack, it doesn't block, and it's blue. So I mentioned that blue is the color that's done away like a freaking bandit in this set, and this is a big reason why. This card is absolutely crazy. It's so good that you're basically going to need to make sure that you either have some way of playing a 4th creature if you're up against any blue deck, or you have a way of destroying your own creatures, because there really isn't that much that's going to undisable things. So you need to do something to be able to combat this card. This card is honestly that good, and I guarantee you that people will use it. Sleep with the Fishes is conveniently the last of the uncommons, because it's also the best of them. So next up, we're going to go into the commons. The list of commons is pretty short. There's 4 of them, but nonetheless, it's cool to have some commons to keep an eye out for. I purposefully didn't put in the gem converters this time around, just because they're dual converters, and I tend to prefer mono converters, and there's just so much gem conversion in the game right now that they don't actively bring anything new to the table. So I wanted to just go over other cards that I think are better to keep an eye out for. So the first of them is Dig Up the Body. This is going to destroy the top 2 cards of your library, but more importantly, you're going to pick one of the first 2 creatures from your graveyard and put it back onto the battlefield. I've mentioned before, I love being able to bring things back from the graveyard, and with this particular card, you can even destroy the thing that you brought back to then bring something else back, and then just throw that thing in the graveyard. So it's just like free creature kill for yourself, which is really good for objectives. So I very much like this card. Yeah, Dig Up Body, really cool, much like. Next up is Hold for Ransom. This is kind of like a poor person's Sigarda's Imprisonment, because it's going to make it so the target creature can't attack or block. However, the creature is also going to gain Enchanted, so at the beginning of your turn, you can drain 8 mana from your hand to give this creature imminent death. So your opponent could choose to actually let the creature die, which is something that you don't want to happen. Nonetheless, if you don't have Sigarda's Imprisonment, this is a really good card to have, but if you do have Sigarda's Imprisonment, you can generally ignore it. This is nonetheless on the list because Sigarda's Imprisonment is that good. Next up is Kill Shot. Kill Shot is a really unique kill spell. I really like it. It's very cool. So it's 7 mana, it has flash, and target opposing creature gains enchanted. When this creature attacks, destroy this creature. So what I like about this card is that you can put it on an opposing creature, and then you pass the turn off to your opponent, and then your opponent could play another copy of that creature, and then it gets destroyed. So I feel like one of the most annoying things when you kill a creature is if your opponent then on their next turn plays another copy of that creature, and you're just like, ugh, if I had just saved my removal for one more turn, I would have been able to get rid of the extra copy of it. Well, with Kill Shot, it'll just do that, because Greg isn't going to stop themselves from playing another copy of a creature. So it's definitely a really, really good spell card, and generally removal card to have in your collection, and to keep an eye out for with your cards. And then the last of the commons is Out of the Way. So Out of the Way is going to have you draw a card, and then you're going to return target creature to its owner's hand, and if that creature is green, you gain 6 mana. So this is big because a lot of our bounce spells lately have required that the opponent have 5 or fewer cards in hand, whereas this one does not have that requirement, meaning that if your opponent has a full hand, it will destroy it. But it also is going to draw you a card, and it also has the possibility of giving you mana, which is really, really good. So that's it for the commons. There's really just actually honestly one exclusive. I'm actually just going to keep this rolling like this because I forgot to throw Broker's Charm into my uncommon folder, so I missed this with the uncommon, so it's just sort of a little added bonus. But this is another one of the charms. It's got the, if there are 6, 6, or 6. But this one's 3 abilities are your first creature gets +1/+0, and you're going to deal damage equal to that creature's power to the first opposing creature, which is going to be able to get rid of your opponent's creatures. It's going to destroy an opposing enchantment card at random, so it's going to be able to get rid of supports. And finally, it's also going to draw cards and give them mana by drawing 2 cards and giving them mana. So you get removal for creature, removal for support, and card draw with mana, which is really, really good. So this is a card you're definitely going to want to keep your eyes out for, and will be a card that I think a lot of you throw into a lot of your white and green decks, maybe even just some of your blue, because blue doesn't have a lot of support removal. So it's kind of an added nicety to that. So in terms of the exclusives, you'll see that Halo Fountain is the only one that I have in that list. The exclusives all look sort of interesting to me, but Halo Fountain serving as a converter with a bunch of effects for when you make a match is really good. So basically, this is a white gem converter that is also going to give you bonuses for if you make a match. Now, keep in mind, this is a swap. I think they meant swap, not match, because it's not every single time that these things, that you make a white match, that this happens. Or maybe it's just not entirely working properly, but nonetheless, for the first white match, if it's 3, you're going to get one of these 1/1 tokens. If it's 4, you're going to draw a card and give it 9 mana, and if it's 5, you're going to gain 10 loyalty. But having a converter that either gives you a creature, more card draw with mana, or a ton of loyalty is absolutely phenomenal. I love this card. I'm definitely going to be making a video on this card. I'm just going to bundle it with Elspeth. I'm putting them both into the same video. But nonetheless, this is a really good card. So if you are a person who puts money into the game, this is definitely a card that's worth picking up. It happens to be the first one that's in the vault right now. But if you're not a person who puts money into the game, it's not like it's an absolute must-have card and you're going to be at a massive disadvantage if you don't have it. It's just gem conversion is always good, and having all these extra effects with your gem conversion is really nice to have as well. So that concludes my chase list. Let me know if I missed anything that's on your list. If you think I'm crazy for not including any of the masterpieces, let me know which of the masterpieces you think are actually worth chasing. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.